Hello, it's Jill Fielding here, and I'd like to give you an idea of the things that have caught my attention in the news this week. And the first thing I'm going to start with is Brexit, which is unusual because everybody else is talking about the pandemic. But I read some interesting research this week about the number of financial services businesses that have been applying to come and work in the UK. And if you remember, when we were leading up to Brexit, everybody was saying, oh, it's going to be terrible. Everybody's going to leave the UK and go and move their offices elsewhere. But it turns out that the opposite is the case. And research has shown that there's been 1,500 new financial services businesses apply to have an operation in the UK, and 1,000 of those 1,500 have never ever had a physical presence in the UK before. So rather than everybody leaving the UK as a result of Brexit, it turns out that everybody wants to come to the UK because of Brexit. And actually, that's not a surprise because the UK is a fantastically strong economy, one of the world's best. We're a long-standing financial services productive type of economy, so that doesn't surprise me at all. And that leads me on to the second story that caught my eye, which was that in January the UK borrowed £8.8 billion worth of debt, of money, and they've borrowed that from investment funds and pension funds and so on. And they've been able to do that because the UK is a strong economy and people want to lend money to strong economies. And when you look a bit deeper into that, the country as a whole has like a credit rating, just like we do as an individual or as we do as a company. And the UK has an A rating, so it's rated by different agencies, just like we are as individuals. But the UK has an A rating credit reference. And so consequently, people are very happy to lend money to people with A type of credit scores. And it occurred to me that that's exactly the same as us as individuals. And although we may not want to borrow £8.8 billion in a month, and we wouldn't be allowed to as individuals, it just goes to show that when the chips are down and you need to borrow money in an emergency, like the country has had to do, then having a good credit score is really, really important. And so for us as individuals, it's exactly the same. So even if you don't want to borrow any money at all at the moment, it's still worth working on your credit score, your credit report, getting that all as clean as possible and getting your score as high as possible, because you just never know when you might need to borrow some money in an emergency, like, for example, in a pandemic. Now, one person who definitely doesn't need to borrow any money to pay his bills is Elon Musk. And this week it was announced that he is no longer the world's richest man. And now, isn't that a shame? And it got me to thinking that as an individual, do you think he really cares about that or looks at it? And apparently he's been overtaken by Jeff Bezos this week. And I'm sure actually they probably swap quite regularly. But for people like Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos, I suspect they are bothered by being the richest or one of the richest people in the world. But for most of us as individuals, we don't much care. And I found that when I work with people, that they start off with huge ambitions to be a multimillionaire and you know, have these whacking great big targets. But as soon as they start relaxing with it, those big targets tend to disappear. And I found that money's very much like water and air. As soon as you've got enough, it ceases to have any scarcity and ceases to have any impact really on us as individuals. So for most people, personally, what they're after is having enough. They want enough money to pay the bills, to maybe buy a slightly better house or a better car. They want enough money to feed the kids, feed the dog, go on holiday, that kind of stuff. But once they've got enough for all of that, then money stops motivating people. And it's easy to understand why. You can only drive one car at a time, you know, so what's the point in having 6 on the driveway? So most people come to the realization once they've got enough money to pay the bills, feed the dog and the cat, and look after the children, then their mind turns to other things that are much more important, like health and in the environment, religion, and so on. So lots of other big picture things, which is lovely. So if you're sitting there with no money at all, don't think that your target needs to be massive. It doesn't. It just needs to be enough. I also read this week that during 2020, the establishment of buy-to-let companies was the second most popular company set up in the UK. And there were 41,700 buy-to-let companies set up in 2020. And that was second only to sort of mail order type of companies. And you can see why they were so popular. But it just goes to show that a lot of people see that property is a good way to go. And we've seen throughout the pandemic that property has held its own. The prices have kept going up, transactions have still been high. And although there was a little blip right at the beginning of lockdown, that has soon corrected. And transactions are probably slower because people can't get out to do valuations as easily, and so on and so on. Nonetheless, a lot of people that ordinarily wouldn't have looked into property investing as a career, as a profession, as a hobby even, are now starting to do so because they see that it's got something special to add to your personal finances, and it doesn't seem to be impacted as much as other things by things like pandemics. And you know, that's certainly something that I do. And finally, this week, it's been announced that during lockdown, the UK populace has been saving. And estimates vary, but broadly, the Bank of England think that we've saved about £100 billion in excess of what we normally would have done. And that's the highest sort of 9-month figure we've ever had recorded. And of course, what the Bank of England and the government are hoping that we're going to do, as soon as the shops start to open, they're hoping we're just going to go out and spend that £100 billion, because that's what will boost the economy. It will get supplies going, shopkeepers will have money, they will then buy stuff, they will then employ people, and suddenly the whole economy keeps going. But of course, the reason people save and have been saving, there's twofold really. One is that there's been limited opportunity to spend your money because you can't go out to the theatre, etc., etc. But secondly, people save money because it makes them feel safe, it makes them feel protected, and makes them feel immune to these strange things that go on in the outside world. So although the government might want us to go out and spend this £100 billion, I suspect there's going to be a lot of people that don't want to. And so whose economy do we support? Do we support the national economy and go out and spend it all? Or do we support a private economy, a personal economy, and save it all just for us? And I think, in all honesty, if you took the populace as a whole, the spenders are going to far outweigh the savers, because there's going to be lots of people that are just going to go out and blow the lot on shiny shoes and holidays. And we've already seen a huge peak in the number of holidays booked since the easing of lockdown has been announced. So I think the spenders will outweigh the savers, but I think there's a way that you could do both. You could spend that money or invest that money on property education and property investing. We've already seen that it's a very popular pastime. And by doing so, if you invest in a property, you are also boosting the economy, because you get solicitors involved and valuers and finance providers and builders and design people, makeover artists, scaffolders, etc., etc. So every time a property is transacted, there is a huge boost to the economy as a whole. Meanwhile, your private economy, your personal economy, is also benefiting, because it's getting an asset that you can rely on in the future, and probably which will also provide you with an income if you get furloughed or lose your job in the future. So actually, with this £100 billion worth of pent-up savings, some people will definitely spend it on sparkly shoes and, you know, shirts and whatever it may be. But some people are going to be really savvy about it and want to protect themselves and their families, and will look at things like property investing as a way of doing that, and meanwhile they're boosting the larger national economy, and that's a win-win for everybody, isn't it? And that's what's caught my eye this week. Bye-bye.